Hello and welcome to this week's UK Column News. Today's UK Column News, first day of the week, although for us it seems like the week never ends. But anyway, it's Monday the 20th of April, just after 1 p.m. And I'm Mike Robinson, and with me John Shackleton. Well, the weather seems not too bad in Plymouth today. Around the country it seems not too bad. So no complaints there.
Except it was a bit frosty this morning walking three dogs at 6:30. But besides that, yeah, it's a beautiful day.
Well, it's a bit darker on the BBC, unfortunately. The BBC absolutely coming in, probably as expected, behind the father of the two children that were claiming sexual abuse in Hampstead in North London. The BBC absolutely keen to make sure that that everybody knows this father has been falsely accused. And that's despite the fact there has been no police investigation into the claims made by the children. And it's on the basis of a judgment made by a judge who really hadn't seen the evidence, but who, on being presented with a medical report, which absolutely showed that the children had been sexually abused, simply seemed to write that off.
Yeah, the judge just did not want to see the evidence. I mean, a judge's job is obviously to judge fairly and look at all the evidence in front of him or her. And they refused to look at it. In fact, they completely dismissed all the evidence from a doctor, who is credible, isn't it? That's a credible witness.
Yes. So anyway, this BBC report is on the basis of an interview with Ricky, who is a professional actor. He is the father of the children. And if anybody has seen this already, I'm sure you have. Well, the guy's entitled to be innocent until proven guilty, at least deemed innocent until proven guilty. But frankly, his performance was worthy of an Oscar, in my opinion. He was wiping,
shedding tears.
He was shedding dry tears because there were no tears there.
There were no tears, no.
Really, it was a great act. But Victoria Derbyshire, who is the person who is interviewing him, and you'll notice the lighting and the setting. It's quite professional. I mean, obviously it's BBC. It's very professionally done. But the point is, it isn't your typical news interview. They've put a bit of effort into this. But frankly, if you watch the clip that is on the BBC website today, she looks completely unconvinced by what he is saying. Well, the editorial view may be different, but her face says it all, in my opinion.
It does, and it's a bit like a drama, isn't it? Well, it's typical BBC, isn't it? They do their dramas, but I suggest people have a look at this and make a valued opinion themselves. But I got sent this story by 3 different people.
Yes. And
then both myself and Mike looked at it, and I think we both concluded between us, or at the same time, that actually we think this is a little bit of an act, but that's just our opinion.
That's our opinion. But at the end of the day, what we're actually asking here for here is a police investigation. Until there is a proper police investigation, then the jury is out, as they say. Right. Now, Ricky, of course, BBC didn't publish his full name. They say to protect his children, but obviously there was enough information on this in this article and in the forthcoming programme. For anybody that wants to identify the children to do so. He said, my 2 children, 8 and 9, they said that I had sexually abused them and I was selling them to people in this satanic cult thing. They named 60, 70, 80 people. I'm not sure why, he doesn't know how many they named. But he goes on to say, they said we were killing babies. I was shipping them in. We would cut the babies' throats and drain their blood and then would drink the blood. It's just horrific upon horrific detail, and indeed the original testimony of the children is horrific upon horrific detail, and that's why there needs to be a proper police investigation. Now, there is a website here, and I'm not going to be overly critical because this is clearly a good piece of work in general, but I just want to highlight one thing where we do need to be careful, because we need to be careful that when we're discussing these issues that we're actually doing it accurately. This is talking about the father again, and they're highlighting this little piece of research where somebody has done some research on the father's website and the IP address associated with that. And I think we just need to be a little bit careful here, because if you do some research, you discover that in fact if I can find it here, that the IP address belongs to a web hosting company. It's a very large web hosting company. They are, excuse me, it's Endurance International Group, and they were bought in 2011 for $975 million. So it's not a small organization, and therefore you're likely to find all kinds of websites all running off the same IP address or appearing to run off the same IP address. So you do just need to be careful with a bit of this, and I just wanted to point that out.
That's right, because it's pointing towards a server, isn't it, rather than any particular organisation, group, or website.
Well, that's right. It's not a dedicated server. It is shared server hosting, and therefore you'll have multiple websites appearing to come from the one IP address. Okay, moving on. We need to mention Melanie Shaw because we didn't mention her last week. Well, here's the latest information. Basically, she is in a court hearing in Nottingham. Well, in fact, it's unlikely she will appear at that court hearing on the 8th of May because this is a mentions hearing, and Melanie's lay legal advisor is basically saying that she's not sure what it's been called by VHS Fletchers, which is the law firm which Melanie sacked in September last year, but somehow still seems to be collecting the legal aid for Melanie and is still claiming that they represent Melanie. But let's say that again. Melanie sacked them in September last year, and yet they seem to be continuing to act.
Well, they're desperate out there. I mean, at the moment as well, from talking to her Mackenzie friend, the judge has tried to order that Melanie signs documentation to allow these solicitors to work on her behalf when she's already sacked them. Like we say, she has sacked them. And the reason they want the document signed is so they can be paid. And unfortunately, Melanie probably isn't listening to this broadcast, but if she was, my advice to her would be, don't sign it. And she's good, and she knows that she doesn't need to sign it. But there've been incidents inside the prison, and we all discussed it the other day, where a solicitor who isn't actually a qualified solicitor went into the cell, and the prison guards, I don't know what else to call them really, I can't call them officers because they're not officers, prison guards, basically pinned her down whilst this would-be solicitor stole files that belonged to her. So there's been theft as well.
Yeah, so let's just reinforce this again. These were not legal files belonging to the law firm or legally being used in the court case.
Yeah.
These were her personal files, which clearly must have contained some information that somebody wanted to get hold of. And they were forcibly removed from her. But so that mentions hearing, as Melanie's legal advisor says, she's not sure what they want to mention. And of course, she is being completely kept out of this entire proceeding. And then on the 18th of May, there's a plea case management hearing. And there are 2 charges already dropped. This is in the latest reason for being in the Sodexo prison at the moment. And the remaining charges are false imprisonment of a paramedic in her home and 2 charges of alleged malicious communications. Now, since the 16th of February, Melanie's lay legal advisor hasn't received a single response to 7 letters sent to Melanie marked Rule 39 legal privilege, which technically no one should be opening but her. And then on the 5th of April, which was Easter Sunday, from the exercise yard at the Sodexo prison, a female was heard to shout that Melanie was not out on exercise and was under segregation and solitary confinement and had been for about 3.5 weeks already. And of course that would mean 23-hour lockdown. So no post, no TV, no exercise, and nobody really knows why she's in solitary confinement. Nobody knows why she's incommunicado. Again, brutal, absolutely brutal treatment of a vulnerable whistleblower, which, let's keep in mind, in the Tory party manifesto, they claim to protect people they will protect people like Melanie, but maybe that only happens after the general election or something.
I don't know. I mean, excuse me, saying that nobody knows. Well, we know, actually. We know why she's in segregation. She's in segregation because she's a whistleblower, because she's trying to oust paedophiles, and this was another reason, and one of our viewers clarified they've got some footage that I think they're going to send to us over the next few days in regard to the marches that happened up and down the country, again, against paedophiles, and why these MPs and why these lords and police haven't been brought to justice. So that'll be quite interesting footage to see.
Indeed. Now, Melanie's MP, of course, is Chris Leslie, and his attitude, again, is Melanie who?
Ridiculous.
So he has been asked if he's going to mention Melanie or speak about Melanie at all over the next couple of weeks, and of course these are important couple of weeks. I'm not sure why, because there's not much in the press about it, but anyway, during the election campaign he clearly does not want this issue discussed. So if there's anybody in Chris Leslie's constituency, can I ask that perhaps you might like to contact him? Maybe a couple of thousand letters at this point would be the appropriate thing, and make it clear that if he isn't prepared to engage in these areas, then perhaps he's not suitable as an MP.
I think so. I think he should be. I mean, this is part of naming and shaming, I suppose. Chris, if you're watching, Chris Leslie, I think you should man up. And you should come on the show and explain yourself why you are not protecting somebody that's within your area. You should be protecting them as their local member of parliament. Well, you're not a member of parliament at the moment, and I hope you don't get voted in. But if you do man up and you stand up for what is right, then come in and come on the show, and we'll do an interview with you and talk to you about Melanie's case and show you actual evidence of abuse. And if we can, and we'll speak to the Mackenzie friend, if she can come in as well, she'll be very happy to debate this with you and to discuss it. It should be very informative.
Indeed. Can't see it happening.
No, neither can
But
I.
the offer's there anyway. Okay, moving on then. The Lord Janner case continues to cause controversy. The Daily Mail here highlighting another, a victim who is absolutely vehement that it's ridiculous that Janner is not being held to account for what is alleged to have taken place. The decision not to prosecute beggars belief. And this is Hamish Bailey, who says that Lord Janner abused him during a hide and seek in 1983. He says he was a 15-year-old resident of a children's home at the time, and he says that failure to prosecute the peer for a fourth time is a complete travesty. But of course, it's not just victims that are speaking out here, because it seems to be past CPS officials.
Yeah, I mean, Lord MacDonald, Queen's Counsel, quite well respected within the legal trade, has basically criticised the Crown Prosecution Services.
He was head of the CPS at one point, right?
Yeah. And he's basically asking the question, why has not the Crown Prosecution Services pursued this paedophile? You know, well, I don't really want to call him a paedophile as such, but you know that's where he is. So
that's what it's alleged to be.
It's alleged that he's a paedophile, but there's a lot of victims, and an awful lot, not one or two, but many that have clarified, and they want justice. But obviously, the individual in question, Lord Janner, has basically decided that he's got memory loss. He didn't have memory loss when he was getting his expenses and his £300 a day for going to the Lords, but he's got memory loss about child abuse.
Yeah.
Quite interesting.
Yeah. Yes, so the cover-up continues. Now, unfortunately, it seems that Theresa May was in Plymouth a couple of days ago, and in fact was getting cake, I believe, or a bun in a shop, not more than a few hundred yards away from this office, and I'm really disappointed to say that nobody knew anything about it. No. So we didn't get a chance to doorstep her. I don't know why they're so cagey about their activities these days.
I don't know.
I can't imagine.
They're in public office, so surely we should have known. And it'd been nice because I did send her a letter about Dolphin Square and about Elm House with all the documentation that she has got. She's got what we call a bundle. She's got the bundle of evidence and witness statements about the abuses and the MPs that are involved. And I'm not going to name the MPs live on air for now. But why, Theresa May, head of the Home Office, won't you allow these files to be published or allow prosecutions? Why do you keep stopping the CSA inquiry?
Well, clearly,
questions that need answering.
questions like that scare her.
Yeah. Well, quite
Because
clearly,
because we don't have guns or bombs
No.
or knives even, so we can't attack you physically, Mrs. May. But clearly you don't like answering questions. So I'm sorry that we didn't get to meet
So
a
am I,
couple of
yeah.
days ago.
Truly sorry, yeah.
Anyway, okay, moving on from this issue, a couple of advertisements. Well, first of all, big 9/11 stuff going on at the moment. We've got, sorry, I do apologise. I'm trying to do 20 things at once here. We've got Richard Gage doing a UK tour, and he will be in Totnes on the 21st of April, and then tomorrow night as well. Well, we're going to go to Totnes.
That's right.
To Totnes Civil Hall in Market Square, where Dr. Stephen Hopwood is running an event. I'm going to be speaking. John will be there, probably saying a few words as well. David Shealer will be there, and Dr. David Halpin will be there as well. So anybody that wants to come along to that, please do get along to that. And all the other dates are there for the broader Richard Gage tour. And of course, we also want to mention the National Health Federation 60th anniversary conference, which is taking place on the 25th of April, and tickets available. I'm hoping that Scott Tips will be on the programme with us at lunchtime tomorrow. Malcolm will be here tomorrow as well. And I'm hoping either tomorrow or Wednesday, Scott will be on the programme to talk about this conference and talk about the National Health Federation and explain for anybody that doesn't know what they're about, because they do some spectacular work, particularly with regard to the Codex Alimentarius conferences globally.
And they're independent.
Absolutely, the only independent voice at the Codex conferences, in fact. So they've got to be applauded and supported.
Definitely.
Right, elections. What's going on?
Well, we thought we'd bring up
Nigel?
Nigel Farage. Now, I've contacted Nigel Farage, and I hope he's watching. I've contacted him a few times to ask him for a debate on not only Europe, but more importantly, from my point of view, constitutional common law, which is very important to me. To date, he's not even replied. So he obviously doesn't want to debate our constitution for some reason. I don't know why. If there's any, I know I'm not having to go at any UKIPers. That's what they call them now, don't they? UKIPers, that's the word. You know, because many of our viewers support different types of parties, and they think UKIP are doing some interesting, or well, saying some interesting things. Now, saying one thing and doing something are completely different. So I'd ask UKIP supporters out there, if you are listening in, could you mention to Nigel Farage why he will not come back to not only the UK column or the British Constitutional Group, but me as an individual, and let's have a debate. We're not after attacking him at all. We're not after attacking any members of Parliament or potential members of Parliament. All we want to do is have a debate about our constitution, about the law and where it's been demolished in this country, and also talk about the European Union and the control it has over our legal system as well. So, yeah, please, Nigel, come on board and come and talk to us if you can.
But anyway, this story itself was quite interesting, because he is accusing David Cameron of having directly caused the Mediterranean migrant disasters, and of course I can't disagree with that sentiment.
No, neither can I. No, not at all.
And it was pretty strongly put, but in fact, of course, it's not just Cameron. Cameron was just continuing, well, I don't mean it in that sense, but Cameron was continuing a policy that has been running in this country for many, many years. I think that despite the fact that clearly Cameron has directly caused these problems as a result of our foreign policy.
I'd say both, you know, the Conservatives and the Labour Party, and you know, you've got Lib Dems in there squeezing it a little bit. They're all responsible. What gives us the right as a country to go bomb another country? So,
we got to keep this in mind
in
the next 2 weeks. And if we're considering where we might place our vote, then...
if you're going to vote at all, I mean, that's another debate.
Another debate. What was Nicola Sturgeon saying?
Well, this is quite interesting. These are interesting developments as I see it. Nicola Sturgeon is quite a big player now. She wasn't really a player as such, and no disrespect for her. toward her, sorry. But now she's become quite a player, and we're looking at a change in politics. We're looking at a rainbow coalition. So are we going to have a scenario where we've got one major party, i.e., well, I hope the Conservative Party get dismantled bit by bit, and the Labour Party as well, but are we going to have one of the main parties, which has usually been the case for centuries, and they're going to form a coalition with who? I don't think they're going to have a coalition with the Lib Dems, because I think they're going to get wiped out. So is it going to be UKIP? Is it going to be the SNP? I think Scotland should have a say in Parliament. You know, I think quite rightly they should. As should Ireland, as should Wales, etc. That's true democracy. But I just sense a stitch-up is going on somewhere.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to come back to this this discussion about Farage and UKIP, because Adrian P. here in the chat box is saying, as a UKIP candidate, I've been pounding the streets, knocking doors, talking to people about constitutional legal corruption. And, you know, Adrian, we've got to applaud you for doing that, and absolutely respect you for doing that.
Doubt, yeah.
But I mean, my comment on this would be that there seems to be shall we say, a slight difference in approach between grassroots UKIP people.
That's right, you're right.
UKIP candidates even, and the UKIP leadership, and I think that's a pretty dangerous situation. I've been hinting at this for quite some time now. Let's say that Farage does decide to, at the very least, support a minority government of the Conservative Party. He said he wouldn't actually go into coalition with them, but let's say he supports them, and Cameron sets up a minority government. If we look, and I'm not saying this is going to happen at all, but if we look at other parties like the Labour Party under Blair and the Lib Dems since Nick Clegg became Deputy Prime Minister, traditional party policies or traditional party values were sacrificed for the office. And so I would just say strongly that if you are a UKIP candidate or a UKIP member, and you find that your views on certain things are different from the leadership, please don't allow those views to be watered down or set aside for the sake of a position in cabinet or some kind of arrangement, cosy arrangement in a coalition.
No, not at all. I mean, and they say that the money is the root of all evil, and that really concerns me with a lot of these. You know, Nigel Farage, I'm not having a go at anybody that's a millionaire. Obviously, it was suggested quite recently that I personally own a massive corporate and I'm very rich, and obviously Brian's very well off as well. And if you give me my bank account details of all that money, I'd be greatly appreciated because we want to change studios. We want a bigger studio, and we can't quite stretch to that at this moment in time. So if you could let me know which bank account I've got all these millions in, or Brian has, then that'd be appreciated at the UK column. Yeah,
okay. Okay, well, that is a nice lead into money, because here we've got Ambrose Evans-Pritchard talking about the IMF. And what he's saying is that the IMF is now warning of a blowout. They have sent information to financial regulators around the world. And he's saying here, an illusion of liquidity has beguiled financial markets across the world and spawned some of the worst excesses seen in Wall Street in modern times. The International Monetary Fund has warned. Investors are borrowing money to buy shares on the US stock market at a torrid pace and are resorting to the same sorts of financial engineering that preceded the last two financial crises. Well, all I can say to this, Mr. Evans-Pritchard, is I think this is exactly what we've been saying for about the last 5 years. And we've been systematically warning over that time that the events of 2007, 2008 were merely a foreshock of something much bigger to come. Nothing has been dealt with, let's just say it again, nothing has been dealt with regard to debt levels, with regard to derivatives, with regard to any of the corruption that's going on in the banking system.
Shares, yeah.
We still don't have any kind of Glass-Steagall type bank separation. We don't have any, we still have money being created out of nothing in the form of quantitative easing rather than in the form of national credit. This money is not being used for any productive purposes. It's being used to try to shore up bankrupt banks. The banks are still bankrupt. That's not going to change anytime soon. And so it's hardly surprising that the IMF is now warning in this way. Now, he goes on to say that the ratio of Non-financial corporate debt to underlying assets reached 27%, even higher than it was just before the Lehman crash in 2008. Issuance of second lien loans will face a likely wipeout in cases of default. Are running near record levels once again. Like I say, we have been at the UK column pointing this out for quite some time. Nice to see it finally making into the mainstream media, but only because the IMF has decided that things are so critical that they need to make a statement.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not a public statement because you can't go to the, the IMF website and download the news release that Pritchard's talking about. He is, of course, publishing slightly inside information.
Yes.
Now, I thought that this was possibly a little bit of positive news, but I'm sitting on the fence with regard to it. This is from the Canadian Citizens Coalition for Monetary Reform, and they're saying what economists are saying about Iceland's sovereign money proposal. So what's this about? Iceland's government, according to the Telegraph from a few days ago, is considering a revolutionary money proposal, removing the power of commercial banks to create money. And this is the bit that I have somewhat doubtful about, and handing it to the central bank. And that seems like from the frying pan into the fire, really. I don't quite get how that is radical or even a break from the past. So the proposal, according to Telegraph, which would be a turnaround in the history of modern finance, the key idea is a new sovereign monetary system where only the central bank is responsible for money creation. The idea makes sense. Separating the creation of money and the allocation of money powers would safeguard against excessive credit creation and could safeguard against excessive credit creation and reduce incentives for commercial banks to create more credit to make financial gains. Iceland's proposal is worth exploring, the Telegraph say. And then the Economist went on to say, under the proposed sovereign money system, the Central Bank of Iceland would increase the money supply in proportion to growth and consistent with the mandated inflation target. Direct control of the money supply would remove the need for traditional policy instruments designed to manipulate commercial banks' incentive to create money, such as policy interest rates and regulatory lending limits. The government would then put the money into circulation via sovereign bond purchases and or fiscal measures. To avoid conflicts of interest leading to oversupply of money, decisions over allocation would be made by a committee independent of the government. And that again is a part that I have difficulty with, because where's the accountability? First of all, there is no accountability. And second of all, what is the incentive here? The central bank creates the money based on a decision by a committee, and it's distributed how? What is it put into? And if we compare that with the Bradbury pound policy, sorry, I do apologise. I've pressed the wrong button. If we compare that with the Bradbury pound policy, what we're saying with the Bradbury is, first of all, it represents a form of sovereign credit creation, but it's a key part of it is what the money gets used for. It must be used for productive purposes. Mm-hmm.
And it's interest-free, of course. I mean,
and in this case, it's interest-free in this case as well, so that there is that benefit. So it is a step forward in that regard. But if we look at the Bank of England as an example, the Bank of England held all the shares of the Bank of England held by the Treasury Solicitor on behalf of the country, but it is a completely independent commercial corporate entity. Mm-hmm. It's operationally independent. It is free from Freedom of Information Act queries, and in fact, it has many other customers other than the government and the nation. So when, for example, I asked the Bank of England, well, how do we know that there are no conflicts of interest between what you do on behalf of the nation and what you do for your other customers? Mm-hmm. When we can't know who your other customers are, we don't know what you're doing for them. We know that your other customers do include me. You've acknowledged that they include foreign governments and foreign heads of state, but you will not acknowledge or tell us what it is you're doing for these people compared to what you're doing with the country. So how do we know that there's no conflict or multiple conflicts of interest? And their answer, we wouldn't do that. So when you take that in the context of LIBOR, interest rate swaps, PPI, all these other things that the Bank of England has utterly failed to regulate, then you cannot trust the Bank of England or any other central bank, in my opinion, because they are all constituted in more or less the same way. You can't trust them with this type of situation.
It's a private corporation.
Now, the big problem that everybody says is you cannot allow the government to issue credit, because they'll issue credit at times of elections and they'll cause massive inflation on a long-term basis and whatnot. While that is a valid concern, no policy works unless people are held to account. That means that us as individuals have to take an active role in what our government ministers are doing, and therefore, if they're held to account, then that type of thing shouldn't happen. In my opinion, that's a much stronger position than handing your right to create money over to a so-called independent third party that in fact isn't independent, because it's part of a global financial system run through the Bank for International Settlements.
I mean, what about credit unions? Why don't we promote credit unions? What's your thoughts on?
Well, that's a whole other question.
It is, yeah.
Right? That's a whole other question. We don't have time to do that now. But anyway, so what might be spent some national credit on? Well, we're just going to applaud the Japanese here for their latest attempts at maglev, and they have managed to get this train running at 361 miles per hour. 366 miles per hour, which is up from the previous record, was 361 miles per hour. But it's not going to last long, because next Tuesday they're expecting to run at 372. So the Japanese do not have problems with leaves on the line.
No, of course they don't. Yeah.
And I think we're going to leave everybody on that.
Sorry, I was laughing then.
on that note, no leaves on the line in Japan, but unfortunately we're still stuck with them.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, so thanks for joining us. If you're able to get to Totnes tomorrow night, hope to see you there. And we'll see you tomorrow, hopefully with Scott Tips, but certainly Malcolm will be in. And hope you have a good day, and see you tomorrow.
Yeah.